Welcome to this explainer. If you're watching this right now, chances are you're navigating one of the absolute hardest things we go through as humans, the sting of rejection and heartbreak. It's exhausting, it's confusing, and honestly, it can make you feel completely powerless. But today, we're going to change that. We're taking a really close look at the psychology behind emotional attachment, and we're going to explore how you can genuinely take your power back. We'll be breaking down some of the most common and honestly highly flawed advice out there, and replacing it with a real step-by-step approach to getting your emotional independence back. All right, let's dive right into this. So ask yourself, is your silence really making them miss you? Look, if you spent any time at all scrolling the internet for relationship advice, you've definitely been told that going no contact or just giving them the silent treatment is the ultimate weapon to win someone back. The whole theory is that if you just pull away, your ex will suddenly realize what they lost, they'll panic, and they'll come scrambling back to your door. And hey, it's a super comforting thought when you're hurting, but we really need to challenge this popular narrative right out of the gate. Because relying on silence as some sort of manipulation tactic, it almost always backfires spectacularly, and it just leaves you completely stuck in this endless cycle of waiting. That brings us to section 1, the myth of silence, and exactly why pulling away fails. There is a huge, glaring contrast between what our anxious brains tell us is happening and what's actually happening in the real world. You stop texting, you stop chasing, you literally just sit on your hands hoping they'll decide to come back on their own. And in your head, your expectation is that they're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, just overwhelmed with regret and missing you terribly. But the heartbreaking reality? They're living their life completely carefree. They're perfectly fine. They're going to work, they're hanging out with friends, and they're acting like absolutely nothing happened. They aren't getting closer, they're actually only moving further away. So, the absolutely crucial point is right here. Silence doesn't work everywhere. Everyone tells you to be quiet, to use silence as this grand ultimate strategy, but honestly, that's just complete nonsense in certain situations. Sometimes your quietness doesn't even register with the other person. I mean, just think about that for a second. You are agonizing over every single minute you don't reach out, and they haven't even noticed you're gone. If your silence completely fails to make an impact, it is absolute proof that you don't mean anything to them right now. It shows they don't value you. And as tough as it is to hear, maybe they never really did. Let's move to section 2, swallowing the hard truth. You have to accept it to move on. I want you to think of silence kind of like a giant mirror. It only reflects something back to you when there is actually love, affection, and investment on the other side. You've got to stop chasing a mirage. If the other person simply has no place for you in their heart right now, if there's no underlying affection there at all, how on earth could your silence shake them? It just can't. A mirror literally cannot reflect a light that isn't shining. To truly embrace this and move forward, we have to face 3 pretty bitter truths. First, they just don't care about you anymore. Whether you exist in their daily life or not makes zero practical difference to them. Second, they're totally used to you. They know your patterns, right? They know that no matter how long you stay silent, after a day or 2 or maybe a week, you're going to crack and message them again. Because of this, they just sit back, relaxed, kind of treating your silence like a joke or just a temporary tantrum. And third, they already moved on. They have completely mentally deleted you from their romantic future. You really need to let this next point sink in. No response is their final answer. Being essentially deleted by someone you care deeply about is incredibly painful. It totally stings the ego and it breaks your heart. But waiting around for some grand explanation or that perfect closure conversation that is frankly never going to happen, that's only going to keep you chained to the past. Accepting this total lack of response, interpreting their silence as their definitive, final answer, that is your only true path to freedom. It's the rock-bottom baseline from which you can finally start rebuilding. All right, section 3, escaping emotional traps. Basically, don't cheapen yourself. When that harsh realization hits that your silence simply isn't working, an overwhelming 90% of people absolutely collapse. They panic, they completely lose their resolve, and they honestly humiliate themselves by crawling right back to the person who rejected them. Only a tiny 10% actually manage to maintain their boundaries and keep their dignity. So are you doing what the 90% do? Our entire goal today is to give you the mental strength to be in that elite 10%. A mentally strong person definitely feels the panic, for sure, but they absolutely refuse to make the mistake of acting on it. This panic we're talking about, it quickly morphs into these really common emotional traps that your brain uses to totally trick you. You'll try to rationalize it, thinking, oh, let me just send a harmless message to see how they're doing. Or maybe you'll post a sad quote or a moody picture on social media, secretly hoping they'll see it and somehow notice your pain. You might even manufacture completely fake reasons to force yourself into their physical path, or you'll just constantly ask mutual friends about them. Do you want to know the truth about these cheap little games? They are literally the worst mistakes you can make. Every single time you pull one of these stunts just to win back a crumb of their attention, they just laugh. They see right through it, and they know you are still completely locked in their cage. And this brings us to a really fundamental rule of human psychology and perceived value. People don't value what's always available. Please, do not sell yourself short. Think of it in super basic economic terms. Something that is always on the market, in infinite supply, naturally loses its worth. If you continually return, if you continually reach out, and you continually make yourself available after being explicitly rejected, you eventually become totally worthless in the other person's eyes. You have to fiercely protect your value by making yourself unavailable to those who don't appreciate you. Which perfectly leads us into Section 4, the power of transformation. Stop waiting, start building. The absolute biggest trap you're currently stuck in right now isn't even necessarily that you love them. It's that you are waiting for them. Waiting has absolutely zero power. In fact, waiting gradually destroys you from the inside out. I mean, think about what your day actually looks like when you're in this state. Checking your phone every single second, hoping for a notification, praying for a message. Every time that screen lights up and it's not them, a little piece of your emotional independence is just chipped away. A truly strong person never waits around like a dog for someone else's validation. You have got to cut the cord on waiting. And here is exactly, practically, how you do that. These are 3 concrete, absolutely non-negotiable steps you've got to take right now to begin healing. Step 1, stop checking their profile. I'm serious, block them today if you have to. Step 2, stop watching their stories. You absolutely do not need a daily, curated update on the life they actively chose to live without you. And step 3, stop hoping for messages. You need to actively tell yourself that the conversation is over. Done. From this moment on, you decide to stop being a passive participant in your own heartbreak. Look, your greatest weapon isn't silence. It's completely transforming yourself. Let them imagine you sitting at home, crying into a pillow, but then let them see you suddenly operating on an entirely different level. The real revenge? It's your body getting fit. It's your career taking off and reaching completely new heights. It's having a genuine, wide smile on your face because you are actually truly happy again. Elevating yourself like this, it hits their ego like a ton of bricks, because suddenly they see someone who is entirely out of their reach. Now, to achieve that level of success, you really must turn your chest into stone regarding the past. And hey, that doesn't mean becoming some cold, unfeeling person in your daily life. Not at all. It just means you stop living your life to prove things to someone who didn't want you. Take all of that immense, totally wasted emotional energy you've been pouring into their void and invest it directly into your own career, your own health, and your own well-being. Raise yourself up so incredibly high that someone deciding to leave your life cannot possibly stop your world from spinning. I want to leave you with this incredibly powerful realization. Once you truly learn to love yourself, you'll never accept being anyone's second choice again. Building up your self-worth is your ultimate shield in life. When you recognize your own value and when you put the work in to invest in your own growth, you naturally set a much higher standard for exactly how you expect to be treated. You are entirely capable of building a life and a sense of self-worth that no rejection can ever diminish. We're human, right? We experience pain, but we also have this astonishing capacity to heal, rebuild, and come back stronger. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I'm leaving you with this final, vital question to ask yourself. Will you keep waiting, or will you start building? That choice is entirely in your hands, starting right now. You've got the blueprint, you know exactly which emotional traps to avoid, and you know the incredible potential that's waiting for you on the other side of this heartbreak. Go reclaim your power, fiercely protect your value, and go build a life that makes you genuinely happy. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time as we continue to break down the big ideas that shape our lives.